Ababa, African Court on Human and People's Rights, election management bodies from around Africa, and civil society organizations from the following countries: Algeria, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Tanzania, Tunisia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. The mission is supported by a team of experts from the African Union Commission, the Pan-African Parliament, and the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa. The African Union Mission observed the elections in accordance with the spirit and letter of the Durban Declaration on the Principles Governing Democratic Elections in Africa of the year 2002. Then the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance of 2007, and the guidelines of the African Union Election Observation Missions and election monitoring. In addition to these continental instruments, the African Union Observation Mission also took account of the constitutional and legal framework governing elections in the Republic of South Africa. The mission arrived in South Africa on 27th April 2014 and will remain in the country until the 12th May 2014. This preliminary statement is released following the announcement of the provisional results by the Independent Electoral Commission. However, the final declaration of the results by the Independent Electoral Commission is still pending and will be done once all the results are tabulated. The African Union Mission hereby presents its preliminary findings and recommendations based on its consultations and observations up to the close of polling and counting on 7th May 2014. A detailed final report of the mission will be shared with relevant authorities in South Africa after the elections. At this point, I invite His Excellency Ibrahim Afol, the Deputy Head of the mission, to come and give the objectives and methodology of the mission. Thank you very much.
Objectives and methodology of the mission. In line with the mandate contained in the AU instruments, the objective of the AU mission is to make an independent, objective, and impartial assessment of the 7th May 2014 general elections in South Africa. Pursuant to the above objective, the mission leadership consulted with key and relevant stakeholders in South Africa. Among them are the Independent Electoral Commission, major representatives, and civil society organizations. The mission also attended a briefing session convened by the Independent Electoral Commission for international observers, where they were appraised on the election preparation and the aspect of voting and counting processes. To enhance its observation methodology, the AU mission conducted a 3-day training for its observers on the use of the AU checklist and reporting, as well as received the briefing by experts and key electoral stakeholders in South Africa. The mission also co-organized 2 joint consultative meetings with the leadership of Southern Africa Development Community SADC, Election Observer Mission, and the Commonwealth Mission. During these meetings, held before and after the election day, the heads of the 3 missions had useful exchanges on several aspects of the electoral process, including harmonized approach for deployment, observation, and the release of preliminary statement. The AU mission deployed 26 teams to observe the election in the 9 provinces of South Africa. Upon arrival in the provinces of deployment, the AU observers held further consultations with key stakeholders and members of the public to familiarize themselves with the local political and electoral context and voter perspective on the election. Preliminary findings and observation. This part of the statement is divided into 8 sections. Section A, general political and electoral environment. The 7th May national and provincial elections in South Africa coincided with the 20th anniversary of the advent of democracy in the country in 1994. The elections were also historic because the voters who were born after 1994, born frees, were casting their ballot for the first time. Significantly also, this was the first general elections to be held after the passing away of the country's first democratically elected president, Nelson Mandela, who was widely recognized as the unifier of the nation. The mission noted that there were 29 political parties contesting national elections, including newly registered political parties. The mission noted that the parties conducted themselves in accordance with the electoral law, and the mission observed that on election day, millions of South Africans enthusiastically made their way to the polling stations, patiently queued, and took their turn to vote, some late into the night. The mission noted that the political and electoral environment was generally peaceful across the country, with voters being able to exercise their right to vote. There was also a high level of tolerance between the contesting political parties and their supporters. And the mission also noted the professionalism of the security forces. Number 2B, preparedness of the electoral management body. The mission observed that the Independent Electoral Commission preparation and management of the entire electoral process were such that it contributed to the overall integrity of the process and enhanced public confidence. most of the stakeholders and the AU, which the AU met, expressed confidence and trust in the ability of the Independent Electoral Commission to preside over a credible and transparent process. The mission noted that the internal safeguard put in place by the Independent Electoral Commission ensured smooth operation of the entire voting process. It further noted that the measures taken to improve the credibility of the voter rolls, voter identification, and result transmission minimized challenges to ensure efficient operation of the entire process. The mission has also observed that the International Electoral Commission personnel were adequately trained on all aspects of the electoral process and demonstrated high level of professionalism, competence, and understanding of their role and responsibilities. Opening of the polls. The mission observed that most of the polling stations visited by its observers opened within the stipulated time at 7 a.m. In most polling stations, the Independent Electoral Commission personnel were present and undertook the opening exercise in a commendable manner. Polling station and election materials. The mission noted that the polling stations were clearly marked and that the layout of the majority of polling stations sufficiently guaranteed the secrecy of the vote, as voters were able to vote without interference. Most of the polling stations were located in public places, and the Commission conveniently placed signposts to direct voters to this polling station. The mission noted that in most polling stations, voting was conducted in streams arranged alphabetically. Yet, in a few polling stations, some streams had more registered voters, thereby contributing to long queues in those polling stations. The election materials were adequate in most of the polling stations visited and were deployed well in advance. However, in some polling stations, few incidents of inadequate voting material were observed by the African Union observers. Voting procedures. The independent electoral personnel demonstrated remarkable knowledge of the voting procedures. The mission observed compliance with rules relating to the handling of the election materials, identification of eligible voters, voting procedures, and scrutiny and the reconciliation of ballots at the beginning of the counting process. The mission observed the elaborate identification process put in place by the Independent Electoral Commission, which ensured that only eligible voters were allowed to vote during the elections. It has also noted that the Commission involved political parties' agents in making decisions regarding voters who did not have proper means of identification. This inclusive and participatory process of decision-making ensured that tension was minimized in the polling station during voting. The mission also noted the special measures taken by the Independent Electoral Commission to facilitate and assist special groups, including the elderly people and disabilities, nursing and expectant mothers, to cast their vote during special voting day at home or during the election day at polling station. Closing, counting, and transmission of results. The mission noted that the closing procedure were complied with and most polling stations closed on time at 9 p.m. However, where there were long queues, voting were extended for those already in the queue. As far as the counting is concerned, the counting process was preceded by an elaborate process of reconciliation of the ballot in order to enhance transparency and accountability. This case of transparency and accountability, in some cases, delayed the counting process until the early hours in the morning. The transmission of the results was done electronically, and the Independent Electoral Commission issued the first results from Eastern Cape Province around midnight. Use of technology in election. The mission commends the Electoral Independent Commission for the use of technology that enhanced the integrity of the voter register, voter identification, counting, tabulation, and transmission of the result, and for measures taken by the Independent Electoral Commission to ensure that its polling staff were adequately trained on the use of the technology. Participation of women on Electoral Day. The mission wishes to underscore the remarkably high level of participation and inclusion of women in the electoral process at all levels. Women were engaged as presiding officers, polling officials, party agents, and election observers. Women also turned out in large number to vote in the elections. The mission wishes to state that the success witnessed in the overall conduct of the election was in some great measure to the credit of women. Conclusions. On the basis of the foregoing, the mission preliminary conclusion is that the 2014 national and provincial elections of South Africa were held in a conducive environment which allowed the electorate to effectively participate in the electoral process and to exercise their right to vote. The mission, based on its observations, has come to the preliminary conclusion that the national and provincial elections of May 7, 2014 in the Republic of South Africa were free, fair, transparent, and credible. The elections were also peaceful and reflects the wish and aspiration of the South Africans. The mission wishes to congratulate the people of South Africa, the Independent Electoral Commission, political parties, civil society, the media, and all other stakeholders for the peaceful manner in which the 2014 national and provincial elections were conducted. As the electoral process is yet to be concluded, the mission would like to call on all stakeholders to continue to uphold peace and harmony across the country and await the final announcements of the result by the Independent Electoral Commission. The mission will release its final and comprehensive report 2 months after the election. Last but not least, the African Union Election Observer Mission expresses its gratitude to the people and government of the Republic of South Africa for their warm welcome and cooperation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellence. We will take 5 single questions and not multiple questions. I'll start with the 2 gentlemen.
Are we wrapping now? Bye-bye. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm Harrison from Global News.
Well, that's a wrap from the floor.
I would like to ask Your Excellency.
Presentation of the preliminary report by the AU Observer Mission, of course led by the former president of Ghana, Mr. John Kofi Kufuor. And they are very happy with what they've seen in South Africa. Elections free and fair.
Yep, he's congratulated South Africa. He congratulated the IEC, saying that these elections were peaceful, they were free, they were fair, and they reflected the will of the people of South Africa.